Check, check, check. Okay, how's everybody doing? This is a great opportunity for me to come up here and talk to you guys about engagement and everything that's going on. It sounds like we're going to have a little bit of a Que Pasa USA approach to the town hall meeting. I don't know if anybody knows that analogy. Tengo cara gringo, pero no soy gringo. Hablo un poco de español. So I am also going to try to talk to you guys about what all this means. The reason why I chose the word DNA is because I personally am a big believer in a system being something that incorporates and involves multiple different elements and different levels. Engagement involves senior management, it involves middle management, and it involves employees. It involves employees interacting with each other. So if you'll bear with me, I think looking at it at the cellular level, thinking about DNA, you start to realize that there's a couple of things that are very, very critical to engagement. One of them is transparency, which we'll talk about, how clear and open you are. The second is communication, and the last one being accountability, right? Are you aware of what you're doing? Are you taking responsibility for what you're doing? So with that, I'll go ahead and get started. The definition in English for engagement is harnessing organizational members' selves to their work roles so that people can employ and express themselves cognitively and emotionally. I believe that we're all very cognitively capable, that we have tremendous capacity to think and to understand and to know and to be able to get the job done. But when I think about engagement, I think about the emotional component of it, the reaction that you have to it, the attitude that you bring to work. I think that that's a very important part of how we as employees perform on the job. What's our attitude? What's our reaction to our coworkers? What's our reaction to our job? How do we feel about that job? I really, really think that that's an important consideration, and I feel like it might have been communicated here. So I'm a big believer in mind, body, and soul. To me, without gana, there's not really anything else we should be focusing in on. So, ¿qué significa? Un alto nivel de compromiso que un empleado tiene con su trabajo. Was that okay? Everybody how was that? Okay, good. All right. ¿De dónde viene el nivel? ¿De dónde viene el alto nivel de los empleados? Eso viene de los empleados, del jefe, de la compañía, de la cultura. ¿De dónde viene ese alto nivel? If you can have that, si tú tienes ese alto nivel, tú puedes identificar con la tarea que realiza y la desempeña con responsabilidad, eficacia y orgullo. Orgullo, pride in doing what you do, right? Las ganas de los empleados de estar en la empresa y trabajar por deseo propio, no por necesidad. How much gana do you bring to work? I love what I do. I bring a lot of gana to it. But that's a different question for everybody in this room. So where is that gana? That first thing, that first part of this engagement situation is understanding that that needs to be there. Secondly, we need to look at something called transparency, right? How clear and concise and open do you think your office is? How clear and transparent are you with your coworkers? Is it safe? Is it okay to be transparent? Is it okay to speak your mind? Where are the barriers that keep you from doing that? Okay, these are the natural outcomes of groups of people working together. We're only human. We have these natural barriers. So we have to somehow build transparency into it. A lot of us feel like doing that to our coworkers, but we don't. Maybe we should. It's called emotional dissonance, but that's for another time. ¿Qué significa transparency? La práctica de compartir información de manera abierta, honesta y constante. Honesta, to speak honestly. Is that an easy thing to do in organizations? Absolutely not. We need to understand how to say things, when to say them, who to say them to. But if we get too sensitive, or if we get too closed off and we're not transparent, then you end up losing the critical ideas and innovation you might get from people when they're feeling like they don't have the ability to really speak up and speak out. Cuando existe transparencia entre los miembros de una organización, se logra una cultura de confianza que es básica para el buen desempeño de una empresa. I think that that's a big important term. ¿Qué significa una cultura de confianza? Una persona, un empleado puede tener confianza, pero eso no quiere decir que la cultura de la compañía tiene confianza. o que la confianza de la cultura de la compañía ayuda a los empleados de tener confianza. It's a very important part of it. So as we look at these different cells and DNAs of transparency and engagement, we realize that this is one of those critical requirements for that to actually occur. Secondly, I'd ask you to think about communication, right? And let me use this town hall meeting as an example of that, as I just check here for a second. This town hall meeting, by its very exercise, is an initiative in communication, getting individuals to communicate, getting everybody engaged. And I'm trying to keep 250 people engaged. What about the company as a whole? How do you communicate in a way to keep everyone engaged? Has senior management asked you for your input? And if they did, are they taking it into account? It seems like they are here in this town hall meeting. I'm just talking to you about what the initiatives really mean. Do you feel like you can speak to your managers and top management? Do you feel like they're taking into account what you say? Are they involving you? So informing, involving, and engaging everyone on a simple level of all the different things that are going on. So la capacidad de transmitir un mensaje claro y honesto a todo nivel. Let me say one thing real quick about this, and I'll try to slow down for a second. There's a great model out there, and it's nothing new, but I will give props to the people who wrote it. If you've seen this Radical Candor, it's a book that came out of a executive from some of the .com companies. And basically she says, you can be really, really difficult and make people challenge and do their job, and you can make them focus on their job. That doesn't mean you're mean. Just because you're being a good boss, just because you're being someone who helps someone do their job, just because you're focusing and challenging those people to do their job, doesn't mean that you're mean. Some people tend to think that they can't say something directly about the job because they feel like it shows that that person isn't caring for the other person. We have to think about this differently. They're two different things. To care personally and to challenge directly are two different things. Okay, so let's not confuse those because that also leads to communication being limited. I'd like to also state that la comunicación transparente juega un papel fundamental al momento de crear alineación y trabajar para un fin común. What I like about this statement here is, if you think about it, there's really no point to do anything towards future initiatives and drive if everybody doesn't understand what the root assumptions are. We come back out here for a second. You realize I've talked about two of them, engagement being this gana, to want to continue to be involved spiritually, emotionally in the organization, and understanding the roles of both transparency and communication as being critical to reaching that goal of engagement. The last thing, and I understand, you know, it's a lot to kind of swallow, but the last thing I'd like to mention is the idea of accountability, okay? This idea that I remember being an accountable person. I remember being someone who took a lot of responsibility for things, but as I went to work in organizations, I started to realize, oh, look, other people aren't as accountable as me, so maybe it's okay for me not to be that accountable. Right? But accountability is something that I think most of us have. The question is, do you feel that accountability in your team, in your regional office? Do you feel that accountability with your bosses, with your supervisors, so that if you don't see it across the board, it's going to be difficult to kind of reflect and mirror that. One other way to describe this in Spanish is rendición de cuentas. And so, de tomar responsabilidad por tus acciones, take responsibility, toma la responsabilidad, responder de manera responsable ante los resultados y consecuencias, piensan antes de coger decisión, y finalmente de actuar, to act accordingly, your division and your regional office to be successful. So I'll zoom back out here for a second and just kind of close it up by saying engagement really isn't a big thing. It really isn't something that's hard to understand, but it has such a fundamental impact on organizations because it talks about not just what people know. It talks about whether or not they're really interested and what things can be done to bring about a spirit and a gana to want to work and go to work and get things done. I've always said I'd prefer have someone who works for me that has a lot of gana and not so much capacidad than have somebody with a lot of capacidad and not very much gana. I hope you understand what I'm saying, and thank you very much. I really appreciate it.